When Scotland voted to stay in the UK, it thought it was staying in the EU too. Brexit is the reason many Scots are demanding another vote on independence. It's also the reason independence now would be so different to 2014. So, welcome to the border. 96 miles separating non-EU England and a Scotland which, if independent, would want back in. Scottish independence is one of the most talked about issues of our time in Britain. And yet what it might mean for the border here between Scotland and England is hardly discussed at all. But isn't one of the lessons from Brexit and Northern Ireland that an issue as fundamental as the dividing line between countries cannot be talked about enough? We've enlisted 4 experts.
I'm a specialist in EU politics.
I'm an expert in borders, particularly the Irish border.
To answer the big questions.
I'm a specialist on devolution and Brexit.
I'm a specialist in international trade.
For starters, with the Scottish elections focused more on a referendum than independence itself, is it relevant to be discussing the border now?
Absolutely. One of the things that voters are going to have to bear in mind when thinking about an independence referendum is that how they vote will affect the future of this border.
Now, if an independent Scotland rejoined the European Union, there would be an EU border between Scotland and England. So it's a very big difference. And I'm disappointed it's not being discussed more alongside other substantive issues of independence in this campaign.
In 2014, a prankster set up a fake border here. Passport controls weren't on the cards then, and most experts think they'd be extremely unlikely in future. But if Scotland were to leave the UK, what might a border with England look like?
If Scotland rejoined the EU, what would happen is the border between Scotland and England would essentially become the EU's external border.
At the main crossing points that are designated as entry-exit points between Scotland and England, you would expect to see, in the first instance, customs posts.
You would need to have customs officials stationed here. And that means, it means more buildings, it means the ability, if necessary, to close the border.
So EU membership for Scotland may have the biggest impact on this largely invisible divide. Is it plausible that Scotland itself would put up no barriers to cross-border trade?
No, it's not plausible, because if Scotland is an EU member state, then it has to apply the common EU trade policy.
The EU would be absolutely strict on the need for checks and controls at the Anglo-Scottish border.
It's not the Berlin Wall. It's just something that is going to add frictions to trade.
But an independent Scotland would, of course, seek to reverse Brexit. What else could Scotland do differently?
One of the difficulties with Brexit is that the deal was signed 8 days before it was implemented. There's no need to do that again.
And so to this thorny issue. The figures aren't perfect, but they suggest Scotland exports 3 times more to the UK than the EU. What are the potential costs of a border here?
My research finds that independence would be around 2 to 3 times more costly for the Scottish economy than Brexit, reducing Scotland's income per capita by somewhere between 6 and 9%. And that's coming from the additional cost of trading across the border, leading to higher prices and fewer opportunities for exporting.
So there would certainly be new costs to businesses. They would need to pay customs brokers to comply with this new paperwork.
But what might the benefits be?
I think the benefit would be that it would remove the border between Scotland and the rest of the EU. Now, obviously, some of the problems that have been introduced because of Brexit, so for example, in the Scottish seafood sector, would be mitigated if an independent Scotland decided to rejoin the EU.
So for Scotland, if it was to become independent and to become part of the European Union, it would say it would be part of that much wider market of the European Union.
I think there's definitely a potential win-win there for an independent Scotland on migration and movement of people, because if Scotland stayed in the UK-Ireland common travel area, then people in both directions would be able to live, work, travel freely between England, Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland, but we'd have free movement of people again with the rest of the European Union.
There are many more opinions and disagreements about this border, but few who study it closely think it'll be on the fringes of the independence debate much longer.
Kieran Jenkins, and tomorrow we'll be hosting the first national televised debate between Scotland's main party leaders. Krishnan Guru Murthy will be hosting the special live event in Glasgow here on Channel 4 News at 7 tomorrow night.